As I was getting ready to speak last week, I heard the news that special forces had gone into Venezuela and arrested Maduro, and it's definitely a sizable event. I've been hearing that there's oil tankers that have been seized coming out of Venezuela, some of them flying Russian flags. That's a sizable event. And I heard that the Russians were activating their nuclear subs to come over and escort their oil tankers from Venezuela, and that's pretty big. Then they started to fire off some of their very high-tech rockets into Ukraine. It's a sizable event, letting us know what kind of hardware they've got. And then the Chinese, on top of that, they decided they'd fire a few rockets towards Taiwan just to put the cherry on the cake, so to speak. Be listening to the political analysts about what's going on in the world, and the repeating quote that I hear, or phrase that I hear, is we're leaving behind international law and entering into the period of might makes right. Now, what does that mean? What do they mean by we're leaving behind the period of international law and now we're in the period of might makes right? Well, the idea here is that there was a period in man's history where we had this thing called international law, where everybody agreed to the rules that the nations would live by. Well, that's a nice fantasy. That's a nice fantasy, but it's always been a lie. It's always been a lie. Sinful man has always been about might makes right. We've a long history. Go back to just after they got out of the garden, Cain and Abel. Cain decided that might would make right when he murdered his brother Abel. And this has been the history of humanity from the get-go. Power grabbing, seeking to lord it over others. The text we read this morning in John 19, Jesus stands on trial before Pilate. They bring him in before the Roman authority, and when they brought Jesus in there, they had already scourged him. Some men did not survive the scourging, the beating that they put on Jesus. Just tells you how hard of a man Jesus was, that his body could take such a beating as a scourging. And they mocked him, and they put a crown of thorns on him, and they'd beat him with the staff. And he was still in his chains, and when they brought him out before Pilate, what Pilate saw was just another Jew who he could put under his feet. But Pilate puts Jesus on trial and then suddenly finds out that Jesus is putting him on trial. And when Pilate loses the argument, and when you go back and read that text and their interactions through all the Gospels, Pilate lost the argument with Jesus, and he backs into 19:10, verse 10. He says, "Do you not know that I have power to release you and power to crucify you?" Pilate plays the might makes right card with Jesus. He's saying to him, I'm in charge here, and you're a nobody. He plays that card. Now Jesus irons this fella out, and with his response, Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me at all unless it had been given you from above. You would have no power over me at all unless it had been given you from above. Now, what does that mean? Well, I got to use an Irish saying here, or an Irish rebuke. Jesus is telling him to wind his neck in. You're getting too big for yourself, is what Jesus is saying. You'd be a nobody, is what Jesus is saying, unless God made you a somebody. And I'm only before you today because God put you in this position. It's interesting that this was the end of Pilate's career after this. After this, he gets demoted. He's out of Jerusalem and he just vanishes into history. God ended that tyrant for sure. But what Jesus is telling them is the way things are not the way it looks. Do not forget the big picture. All power belongs to God and is given and taken away by God. In a might makes right situation that we're in at the moment, in the world we're in, this is what men forget, is that all power comes from God. And he gives it and he takes it away. And that's from top to bottom. It doesn't matter if it's the lives that people are living in Belfouche or Spearfish. It doesn't matter if it's in Washington, D.C. It doesn't matter if it's in Kiev or in Brussels or Moscow or Beijing. All of their power comes from God. All of them. They get up in the morning and breathe because he says so. From Belfouche to Beijing, from the White House, the Republican Party, or the CCP, they're all living at God's leave. Men delude themselves into thinking they're running the show, but it's a delusion. They think they're calling the shots, that they have the power over the world. They're living in a fantasy world. Every one of them. And the reason they reject Jesus Christ is because they don't want the right. They want the might, but they forget the key part of this equation. God. God. When I was a kid, I was a troublesome kid. I'm glad I wasn't. None of my kids turned out like me. I'm glad, well, let's face it, there is one in the room. But I remember they used to give me different kinds of toys when I was a kid, and for some reason they would buy jigsaw puzzles at Christmas. And of course, I'd open them up. There's like 10,000 pieces in there. And I'm just, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And there'd be pieces everywhere. And then I'd sit down to try to put the thing together and throw the box away. Of course, that's the key to it, right? Throw the box away and then just start putting it together. And then I would get a few pieces together. I don't know if you did this when you were a kid. And then you got that piece that just wouldn't fit. So you bit a piece off, jammed it in there to get it to work. I did that a lot when I was a kid. The key to doing jigsaw puzzles is to have the big picture in front of you, that picture, right? And then I think you work on the outside and then you work your way in. I'm still not very good at them. I know there's people who are. I've stopped the whole biting pieces off bit though, so if you ever want to do one, you can let me know. But that's the important part, right? Get the big picture and then it all fits together. In the midst of a world where men are now, and always have been, living by the rule that might makes right, that they're grasping for power, We must step back from it. We must step back from it and look at the big picture. We got to look at the big picture. And the big picture of life is God working out his great plan through Jesus Christ in this world. That's the big picture. If you don't get that big picture, it's going to look like chaos and anarchy out there. We need to step back before we can get it all together and what's happening around us and think about Christ. When it looks like the world's falling apart around us, man, forget this, the most serious part of the equation is what God is doing. And we can't forget that. The world we live in today. We have to be careful we don't leave God out of the equation. And that goes for our individual lives, right up to the top of government. Because he's working in all of those levels. God is at work. So we can't leave him out of the equation. What's God doing from Belfast to Washington, from Brussels to Beijing? Someone says, well, we can't know. Of course we can know. Of course we can know. We sing a song, thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. We don't sing, I'm just wandering around in the dark. And I have no idea what's going on. That's where unbelievers are. Not us. Not us. We have the light of Christ and the light of God's word. We know what God is doing in this world. God's carrying out his great, universal, eternal plan of redemption. Redemption means to buy back. My friend Derek owns a pawn shop. People come in, they give their possessions to him. He writes up a slip. They do a financial transaction, and then they come back and they redeem what they have left there. When they come back and pay Derek his extortionate amount of interest. He does listen to my sermons, but don't tell him to listen to this one. No, Derek's got one of the biggest hearts around here, even but below that hard, brutal exterior, there is a soft heart beating. But that's what redemption means. That's what God's doing in the world, and we know it. He's doing it individually. Everyone in this room is in his redemption plan. Everybody in this town is in his redemption plan. Everybody in Spearface, all the way out through all of the states, South Dakota, every state in the Union, and we might be getting the Greenland in there too, apparently. I'd take the money if I was in Greenland. God is redeeming. God is redeeming. He's coming for what is his. That's why Jesus died on the cross. And he's doing it globally. And everybody is a part of it, including the crazies. He can use the crazies. He can use the governments that just look like they've lost their minds and are running around thinking God's using it. He's God. He speaks universes into existence. What do you mean he can use the crazies? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, he can use the crazies. We know what God is doing. Listen to Psalm 2. Listen. This psalm, it was written for today. Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. That word means Christ. That's what Christ means, anointed. When they had a king, the ritual was to put oil on the king's head. He was anointed with oil. He was the Christ. And here that's what it's talking about. They're plotting against the Christ. Let us break their bonds in peace and cast away their cords from us. Now listen, you want to know what God's doing today? This is what he's doing. He who sits in heaven laughs. He's laughing at them. Well, they've got armies and missiles and special forces and submarines. And God's like, that's brilliant. I love that. Oh, isn't it so cute that they think they're in control? He holds them in derision. Then he shall speak to them in his wrath. Do you see what he does here? It's not thunderbolts. It's not earthquakes. It's not plagues. He just speaks. And the world is shattered. That's his power. And he distresses them in his deep pleasure. And then he says, I've set up my king on my holy hill Zion. God is laughing at the wicked, laughing at the plots of men, laughing at our schemes. And I'll tell you this, if he's laughing, I can laugh too. So can you. Laugh at it. Because God's laughing. Join him. Join him in laughing. Because we know that in all things, work together for our good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. It's all working for our good. How can this be working for our good? You don't need to know. God said it is. Well, it's hard to understand. You weren't asked to understand. You were asked to accept the truth that he is working it all for our good. You don't, and I don't have to know how God's working it all out for the good. We just need to enjoy it. Hey, it's working for my good, but it feels terrible. I know it feels terrible. Going to the gym feels terrible. If you're a runner trying to get ready for a 5K and you're out there on the road running and going through it, that all feels terrible until you complete it and get over the line. I'll tell you what else feels terrible. Sitting at 20 below with a wind chill of 50-mile-an-hour winds out in a blind trying to kill a deer when Christopher's got ice hanging off his beard and I've got hypothermia. But I'll tell you this, the minute you shoot the thing, it's all forgot about. It's all forgot about because we were downwind from the deer. We got her. Listen, I'm nearly done. Bear with me. So what do we do in the middle of this? There's stuff to be done. Let's start with what we don't do. Psalm 37. Psalm 37, do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the workers of iniquity. There's a good place to start. Verse 7, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way. Verse 8, cease from anger, forsake wrath. Do not fret. It only causes harm. Does anybody see a repeated theme there? Don't fret. The word here, the word in the Hebrew speaks about burning, to kindle a fire, to get inflamed. And it's applied to anger, mostly. It's about getting bent out of shape and getting angry and getting fanning that anger and getting angry until you explode. I'm glad I'm not like that. And I'm glad you're not like that. Some people might be like that. But I'm glad we're not. But what he says here is, don't be doing it. Quit it. And then I thought to myself, I cannot think of any reason in the world why I would set myself on fire. Can you? Is there any occasion where you think to yourself, you know what? The best thing for me to do is set myself on fire. There isn't. That's what God's saying here. Don't set yourself on fire with anger. Don't be getting bent out of shape because what you see going on around you and it's just not the way it's meant to be. Don't do that. It doesn't do you any good. It doesn't do me any good. So we're not to do it. He says in Psalm 37, trust in the Lord. Do good. Feed on his faithfulness, not on the media. I got to be on there to see what's going on, but it's not to be my constant diet. Rest in the Lord. If this stuff is keeping you awake at night, stop it. Stop it. Go to sleep. Turn it off. Take the wood off the fire and wait patiently for the Lord. Be confident and at peace and serve the Lord. Now's not the time for us to be fretting or worrying or being terrified by what's going on in the world, because there's work to be done. I arrived in New England in 2000, around that time, and the Patriots, the football team, they were in 9 Super Bowl appearances, and they won 6 of them. Then I left New England, and the franchise has gone over the cliff. I'm wondering if it might be me. Maybe Belichick should have given old Ian a call. What are you doing? We're winning, and now you're leaving. But Bill Belichick had a philosophy for his team, and his philosophy for his team was this: do your job. Do your job. In the midst of a might makes right world, we're to trust in the Lord. We're to do good. We're to feed on his faithfulness. We're to rest in him. We're to be patient. We're not to fret and get bent out of shape. We are to do our job. Do our job. Now, what is our job? Do you know our job's not to save this country? If it was as easy as that, that would be easy. You're not called to save this country. You're called to save the world. All of it. That's your job. That's my job. That's our job together. Go into the world and preach the gospel, baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There's our job. There's our job. Someone says, well, yeah, what if we had a revival in this country? We are the revival. This is it. This is it. Well, I'm not really impressed. There's not 400 or 500 people here. God's here. Christ is here. Does he not have power? Well, if only the Calvary would come over the hill and fix everything. You're it. You're the Calvary. There isn't any others. It's us. Well, I don't know. We're just all a bunch of misfits. And God's like, yeah, I know. Then you look at the apostles around Jesus and you think, well, they were all a bunch of misfits. God's like, yeah, I know. Look what I can do with fishermen. Look what I can do with strugglers. Look what I can do with failed people. Look what I can do with people who've denied me, like Peter. Turn the world upside down. That's what we're called to do. That's what we're called to do. I don't know a whole lot about farming. I know a whole lot more than I did when I came here from New England, spending time with Roger and Christopher. And if they ever need any pointers now, they call me. What should we do with this bull? Where should we put him? Should we put him in with the other bulls? When do you think should we put more alfalfa in? I know we should probably put a bit in that corner in front of that blind. Yeah, just in that wee corner there. No one You'd never know it. You'd never miss it. But listen, I do know this. There's periods of time in a farmer's life where certain things have to be done. And Jesus spoke to it too, and to his disciples. He knew about farming. They knew about it too. And he says in John 4, do not say there's still 4 months, and then comes the harvest. Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes. Look at the fields, for they're already white for harvest. He who reaps receives wages and gathers fruit for eternal life, that both he who sows and he who reaps may rejoice together. For in this the saying is true, one sows and another reaps. I send you to reap for that which you have not labored. Others have labored, and you have entered into their labors. It's harvest time, people. The harvest of man. And listen, we're not going out there alone to do the harvest, and this work is being done. Everybody around you that's in the dark, God is seeking to redeem them. They're in your life for a reason. There's no such thing as coincidence. He doesn't do coincidence. Now, together as a team, it's our job in the midst of a world that's gone mad to get the harvest in. Let me wrap it up here for you before we take the supper. I don't know if you know what a balloon debate is. A balloon debate. It could be just an English thing, I'm not sure, British thing, but when we were in school, we used to do this thing called the balloon debate. The scenario is this: everybody's in a balloon, and there's it's running out of fuel. So if they don't throw a couple over the side, then the balloon crashes and everybody dies. So now everybody in the balloon has to debate why they get to stay in the balloon and don't get thrown over. Right? So I decided one time I'd have a balloon debate with my girls when they were younger. And I says, let's sit down together. This is the scenario. Now you have to give a reason why you get to stay in the balloon and not get tossed out to your horrible death. So I remember, Callum, he says, well, I'm an engineer and I know how to operate a balloon. So if things go wrong, you want to keep me in the balloon so that it doesn't eventually crash and we all die. And I said, okay. Iona turns around and says, and I know this verbatim, she says, I'm a nurse. If someone gets sick in the balloon, I can help them. And, I can make sure they get better. And I said, okay. And then they said, why should we keep you in the balloon? I says, because I have a gun. That's this world system. That's a might makes right society that we live in. But don't forget the bigger picture. They leave out of the equation the one central issue in life. Don't forget God. Don't forget his power. And what is he doing? He's exalting Christ. He's blessing us. He's redeeming man. And he's laughing at them all. Because they crucified Jesus. They thought they had done their worst. They thought that they were in charge. They thought they ran the show. They thought they called the shots. And when they crucified Jesus, they thought, we're done with him. Nobody gave that answer. Because when they went to the tomb, and this is what this supper speaks about, they went to the tomb, they found that tomb empty, and Christ risen from the dead, and the Father has exalted him to his right hand, and now he rules over all the nations. And he's bringing this thing to a successful conclusion by sending his Calvary. And that's you and I. Let's get our job done. Bow with me, please.